In this game, you play as Cecil Harvey, also known as John Fantasy IV. You are the commander of the Kingdom of Baron's elite airship brigade, the Red Wings, and you begin your heroic quest by getting demoted due to expressing doubts over committing war crimes. Fortunately, your king is willing to give you a second chance. You'll be restored to your position if you go and deliver a bomb ring to the Village of Mist. Joining us on this quick and easy mission is our best friend and brother-in-arms, the commander of the Dragoons, Kane Highwind. And so we head through the Mist Valley where we encounter the Mist Dragon. Despite the fact that I kept fumbling through the fight's incredibly simple gimmick, I eventually won. Upon entering the Village of Mist, our party is surprised to find out that the bomb ring they brought is actually a bomb. We also find out that the dragon we killed was summoned to protect the town by one of its inhabitants. By killing it, we unintentionally killed her and made her daughter an orphan. Kane comes to the conclusion that these orders were a bridge too far, and so we agree to defect from Baron. Understandably, the summoner's daughter doesn't trust us, and so in her fear, she accidentally channels her own latent powers, summoning the god Titan, which results in a massive earthquake. This occurring gets us the trophy, Inflammatory Decisions. In the aftermath, Cecil awakens to find that he and the girl have been separated from Kane and cut off from the path to the village, so he has no choice but to carry her unconscious body northwards through a desert. Moments later, we get the trophy Apprentice Warrior for defeating 100 enemies. Eventually, we make our way to the oasis town of Kaipo, and then we bring the girl to an inn so that she can recover after overexerting herself. While we rest, a small force sent by Baron comes to kill the girl, and so Cecil fights them off. This display earns the girl's trust, and so she tells us her name, Rydia. The two of us then go to a random house in town where we find Cecil's love interest, Rosa. She apparently came to try and find him after he went missing, but caught a nasty case of desert fever and is now dying. The only cure is a substance called the Desert Ruby, which can be found in a location called the Antlion Cave. And so we head towards it by going north through the underground waterway, where we meet a sage named Tella. He's heading in the same direction to go after his daughter, Anna, who was apparently seduced by a bard. We decide to team up since our goals are kind of in the same direction. As we advance through the caves, we punt a tiny mage, earning us the trophy Field Research Basic. And then at the end of the waterway, we encounter the Octa Mammoth. We grind them into a fine paste and then reach the capital of the Kingdom of Damcyan. The moment we get there, we watch as the Red Wings carpet bomb the castle. Before going inside, I looted the castle's prison, which gets us the trophy Rookie Treasure Hunter. Inside the castle, we learn that the bard is actually the Prince of Damcyan, Edward, and that during the attack, Anna shielded him with her body. We also learn that the Red Wings came to steal Damcyan's elemental crystal under their new commander, Golbez, and so Tella leaves our party to pursue revenge for his daughter's death. With him gone, we force Edward into our party, and so the three of us go to the Antlion Cave. Near the end of the dungeon, we grab the trophy Thrifty Spender for earning 10,000 gil. We then sacrifice Edward to the Antlion, which gets us the Desert Ruby. By using it, we're able to heal Rosa. She tells us her theory, which is that Golbez is secretly controlling the king and is collecting the crystals for his own purposes. With Golbez possessing 2 crystals already, our party decides to race to the kingdom of Fabul so that we can steal their crystal first. While traveling through the Hobbs Mountains, we encounter a monk named Yang, who we help to fight a very normal bomb that turns out to be a slightly abnormal bomb. We then learn that Yang is the High Monk of Fabul, and so we team up to help him protect their crystal. We give it our best shot, but unfortunately we're pushed back all the way to the crystal's altar, where we're confronted by Kane. Cecil can't bring himself to fight his former ally, and so he's nearly slain. At the last moment though, Rosa's pleas cause Kane to hesitate. Before we can take advantage of this, Golbez himself walks in. He effortlessly electrocutes Edward and Yang, takes Rosa hostage, and then leaves with Kane and the crystal. In the aftermath of this crushing defeat, we regroup and hatch a scheme. We plan to sneak into Baron, steal one of their airships, and then use it to rescue Rosa and take back all of the crystals. To get to Baron, we borrow a boat from Fabul. On the way, our ship gets attacked by the Leviathan. This throws everyone off the ship directly into the sea, where we all perish. Except for Cecil, who washes up on the shore of Mysidia to the far south. Unfortunately, they haven't gotten over the whole war crime thing, so pretty much everyone there fears or hates him. In light of this, Cecil resolves to confront the darkness within himself. On this quest, the Elder of Mysidia assigns the Acolyte mages, Palom and Parome, to accompany him. On our way to the mountain, we grab the trophy Experienced Warrior for defeating 500 enemies. Shortly after this, we run into Tella, who's come to the mountain so that he can acquire the legendary spell Meteor. He intends to use it to kill Golbez, even if doing so would come at the expense of his own life. Our overlapping objectives cause us to team up once again, and so we make our way to the mountain's summit, where we're ambushed by one of the 4 elemental lords who apparently serve Golbez. The Lord of the Earth, Scarmilione. We very easily defeat him, only to then learn that was kind of his plan. Apparently his true strength lies in death, and so he jumps us from behind to start the real fight. This second phase initially gave me a run for my money, until I realized that the holy arrow I'd equipped to Palom was extremely effective. From here, we're able to go inside a chamber at the top of the mountain where we face the darkness within our heart. This allows a mysterious voice to grant us both its power and sword, turning Cecil into a paladin. This gets us the trophy, The Light's Chosen. For some reason, this also breaks the seal on Meteor, which awakens Tella's bloodlust, and so we use a magical device called the Devil's Road so that we can get from Mysidia to Baron. Inside the city, we run into a seemingly mind-controlled Yang who we beat up and drag back into our party. We then use an old waterway to sneak into Baron Castle, where we encounter Baron's captain of the guard, Baigen, who's been gifted power by Golbez. So much in fact that the fight ended up taking over 10 minutes. Our party then heads to the throne room where we speak with the king. More accurately, we speak to the creature that's been pretending to be him, the elemental lord of water, Cagnazzo. We completely destroy him before he has the chance to do anything. Our party then encounters Baron's lead airship engineer, Sid. He joins up with our party since he and Cecil go way back. Since this game only allows 5 party members at any one time, Cagnazzo casts a spell from hell to crush us to death in a hallway. Palom and Prom then turn themselves into stone to hold back the walls. Anyway, Sid leads us to a hidden airship, and so we take off, only to be immediately interrupted by Kane. We're offered a deal of sorts. If we go to Troia to steal their Earth Crystal, we can exchange it for Rosa. After reluctantly agreeing, we receive the trophy Overcoming Grief. When we arrive in Troia, we're disappointed to learn that their crystal's already been stolen. It's been taken by a dark elf who set up shop in the Magnetic Cavern. While inside, we grab the trophy Smart Saver for collecting 100,000 gil. And then at the bottom of the cavern, we confront the Dark Elf. Ultimately though, we kill him, get the Earth Crystal, and then we're brought to the Tower of Zot so we can speak to Golbez. For some reason, he decides to make us climb the whole tower. And so on the way up, we grab the trophy Legendary Warrior for defeating 1,000 enemies. Near the top, our path is blocked by the Magus sisters, Mindy, Cindy, and Sandy, who we easily kill, and so we go to confront Golbez. We hand over the Earth Crystal, and then Tella goes for his revenge by casting Meteor. Golbez survives the attack, but the shock to his system breaks his control over Kane. Cecil then tries to fight Golbez, but he's beaten back once again. Despite having the chance to kill him, Golbez appears to realize something that stops him from doing so. We then rescue Rosa with our surviving allies, and Kane. After doing so, we're attacked by the Elemental Lord of Wind, Barbarizia. Defeating her gets us the trophy Reforged Love. Once we escape the tower, Kane explains the details of Golbez's plan. First of all, we learn that the 4 crystals aren't the only ones. There are apparently 4 more deep underground. Once he has all 8, he'll be able to open up a path to the moon. And so getting the other 4 crystals becomes our next objective. To get down there, we trigger a massive volcanic eruption that will probably have lasting ecological consequences for generations to come. The important thing though is that we're now able to fly underground. Once we get down there, we're immediately caught in the crossfire between the Red Wings and the people of the underground, which forces us to crash land. We're lucky enough to crash next to the Dwarven Castle, and so we talk to their king, Gyat. He informs us that 2 of the crystals in the underground have already been taken by Golbez. In light of this, we decide to have most of our party stay here to defend the remaining crystals while Sid goes to repair our airship. Seconds later, a group of cursed dolls called the Calcobarinas sneak in to find the castle's crystal. Despite successfully killing them, they still manage to send the location back to Golbez, and so he teleports in to steal it. With his magic, he's able to restrain us, and then he summons a shadow dragon to kill us. At the last second, it's killed by a mist dragon summoned by Rydia, who shows up right on time to save us. And then with her help, we're able to defeat Golbez. Afterwards, Rydia fills us in on what happened to her. Apparently, the Leviathan brought her to the Land of Summons, which is the realm that contains the gods and creatures that are summoned by Rydia's people. Due to the time dilation between our world and theirs, she was able to spend years training to unlock her full potential as a summoner. This exposition distracts us long enough for Golbez's corpse to turn into a hand that very slowly crawls up to the crystal and vanishes with it. And so we regroup to come up with a new plan. Since the 8th crystal is hidden beneath a seal that will take a while for Golbez to break, we decide to use that window of time to steal back the other 7 crystals. He's keeping them in a location called the Tower of Babel. Before going there, I explored outside the Dwarven Castle, which ended up getting us the trophy Field Research Advanced for filling out 50% of the bestiary. After this, I raided the Dwarves' Castle for treasure, which got us the trophy Veteran Treasure Hunter. Going up the tower, we eventually encounter a scientist who works for Golbez named Dr. Lugai. We destroy a robot he created named Barnabas, and then fight the doctor himself. After our victory, we learn that the Elemental Lord of Fire, Rubicante, already left with the 7 crystals, and so we switch our objective to disabling the tower's defense systems to stop it from killing all the dwarves. When we reach the control room, we take out the gunners, but they manage to destroy the controls, preventing us from deactivating the cannons. The controls then start to malfunction and explode, so Yang sacrifices his life to do something. As we leave the tower, Golbez explodes the bridge, plunging us to our deaths. Fortunately, Sid swings by and catches us with his repaired and improved airship. Clearly it's not improved enough though, because the Red Wings tail us with ease. In this moment, Sid has a great idea: using himself as a bomb. Well anyway, we head over to the Eblin Cave so that we can use it to access the upper half of the Tower of Babel to finally get the crystals. Along the way, we run into the Prince of Eblin, who is a ninja named Edge. He's in the middle of fighting Rubicante to get revenge for the destruction of his kingdom. Edge loses easily, but Rubicante decides to spare him so that he can fight him again in the future when he's stronger. Since we're one person short of a full party, we decide to let Edge tag along with us. We climb the tower until we're right outside the Crystal Vault. Here we encounter Edge's parents. The 2 of them appear to have been experimented on by Dr. Lugai, and so we're forced to fight them. Shortly into the fight, the 2 of them regain control over themselves long enough to say farewell to their son. They then take their own lives before they lose themselves again. After their deaths, Rubicante arrives and offers his condolences. He claims to have not been aware of Lugai's scheme, but Edge doesn't buy it. His rage awakens his latent potential, and then we prepare to fight Rubicante. Before the battle begins though, Rubicante heals our party, since he's too honorable to accept an unfair fight. It ended up being a pretty even matchup, until I realized how much damage Rydia could do with a well-timed ice spell. Defeating him gets us the trophy Inflamed Anger. Once he's dead, we advance into Golbez's Crystal Room, only to trigger a trapdoor that drops us down to the lower half of the tower, which means we can't get back up. However, we can steal one of the Red Wings' airships, and so we use that to exit the tower. Unfortunately, Sid's explosion from earlier sealed off the path to the surface, which means our only choice is to head down into the sealed cavern to try and get the 8th crystal. Our spelunking gets us the trophy Moneybags for earning 500,000 gil. We eventually reach the end of the cave and successfully take the crystal, only to then immediately get attacked by a trap that was set to prevent anyone from taking the crystal. While we kill it without any trouble, we have a much harder time when Golbez reactivates his control over Kane, using him to steal the crystal from us. With all the crystals collected, Golbez begins opening the path to the moon. Fortunately, there's a secret way for us to get there too. The Dwarf King informs us that there's an ancient ship that's submerged just off the coast of Mysidia that can be used to fly us to the moon. Doing so gets us the trophy to the moon. After exploring around the surface, we eventually find the Crystal Palace where we meet a man named Fusoya. Very quickly, his people are called the Lunarians, and they came to the Earth from a planet between Mars and Jupiter that was on the brink of destruction. When they arrived, they realized that our species was on its way to evolving to their level of development, and so they decided to cryogenically sleep until that day came. Unfortunately, one among them, Zemus, thought that exterminating humanity and then colonizing the Earth was a better idea. Fusoya managed to seal him away, but his power has been able to bleed through the seal enough for him to act through proxies on the Earth. Step 1 of his plan was opening the path to the moon, and now the next phase is the killing of everyone on Earth by activating a powerful automaton called the Giant of Babel. We also learn that the inventor of various pieces of advanced tech was Fusoya's brother, a Lunarian named Kluya, who came to the Earth and had 2 children with a human. And one of those children is apparently Cecil. After explaining all this, Fusoya joins our party to help us stop the giant. And so we fly down right as its rampage begins and hop inside it, only to immediately realize that the enemies here are significantly stronger than we are. Unfortunately, the giant is a point of no return, so I had to reload a save to better prepare our party. The main way I did this was by heading down to the Land of Summons, where we find a lot. First, I grabbed an item called the Rat Tail. I then went to the throne room in the Land of Summons, where we were able to fight their leaders. First, you fight their queen, Azura. She was pretty brutal, but we eventually succeeded, which unlocks her as a summon for Rydia. Her strength made me assume that her husband would also be difficult, so I went up to the surface to meet up with this little gnome guy. In exchange for the rat tail, he gives us a hunk of adamantite, which we can then bring to the smith Kokol. With it, he's able to reforge the sword Kluya gave us into the legendary blade Excalibur. This gets us the trophy, Sword of Myth. We then head back into the land of summons to fight their king, Leviathan. He ended up being surprisingly easy. Despite that, he's a pretty strong summon. After this, I went up to Baron, where we can find the spirit of their deceased king. In death, he was able to become the god Odin. Defeating him proves our worth, and so he gets added to Rydia's collection. After all that, we're strong enough to go back into the Giant of Babel, where we run into the 4 elemental lords who've been resurrected by Zemus to kill us. Turns out they learned from their losses, and now they're attacking as a team. Our numerical advantage pulls us through the fight and gets us the trophy, Rematch. We then advance to the core of the giant, where we fight its CPU along with the CPU's defense systems. I found the fight fairly challenging for a few reasons. For one, the attack node is very fast and hits the whole party. Meanwhile, the defense node continually heals the CPU. This creates an interesting problem since if you destroy both nodes, the CPU will regenerate them. This forces you to pick which one you'd rather have alive. On top of all this, the CPU can cast Reflect, so I ended up having Rydia accidentally kill herself a couple times. Part of the difficulty I had here stemmed from my mistaken assumption that Reflect in this game works like Makara Karn in the Megami Tensei franchise. In those games, Makara Karn reflects a spell one time and then gets expended. Meanwhile, Reflect here remains active for multiple turns no matter how many spells you hit it with. Adding to my confusion was the fact that Edge's ninjutsu doesn't get reflected. So I ended up in a situation where Edge didn't get reflected, which made me think it was safe for Rydia to cast Flare, which then killed her. I then revived her and had her cast Flare again, which immediately killed her. After we destroy the CPU, Golbez comes to yell at us. Before he can say much though, Fusoya uses his magic to break Zemus' hold over Golbez's mind. This causes Golbez to remember the truth, which is that he is also the son of Kluya. Golbez and Fusoya then agree to go fight Zemus together. Meanwhile, we reunite with Kain, who helps us to escape the self-destructing giant. The 5 of us then return to the moon and travel underground into the lunar subterrane, so that we can go after Zemus as well. Entering the final dungeon earns us the trophy Adventurous Wayfarer, for visiting every location in the game. Scattered throughout the cave system, we're able to find 4 weapons that were sealed away along with Zemus. The first that I found is called the Holy Lance, which was guarded by an enemy named Plague. Next, we kill a white dragon who's guarding a sword named Murasame. After this, we find a sword called Ragnarok, guarded by an enemy named Dark Bahamut. This fight was pretty interesting because he starts the fight with an attack called Mega Flare, which killed 2 of my party members and left the rest pretty weak. Fortunately, he only does it once, and so we're able to breeze through the rest of the battle. Finally, we delve into the lowest areas of the lunar subterrane, where we find a sword named Masamune, guarded by a sea serpent named Ogopogo. Collecting all of these weapons earns us the trophy Power Unleashed. We then make our way down to the core of the moon, where Fusoya and Golbez are confronting Zemus. They both cast Meteor and successfully kill his body. His soul, however, is far too powerful, and so his hatred's able to take on a physical form, a being named Zeromus. Despite their best efforts, Golbez and Fusoya are unable to fight back against him, and so it's up to Cecil to use the power of his purified heart to reveal Zeromus' true, monstrous form and defeat him. It didn't go well. So to prepare for the rematch, I went over to the Cave of Bahamut, where we fight the God of Summons, Bahamut. The main gimmick of the fight is that he counts down from 5 and then uses Mega Flare. He does this in an infinite loop. It does a lot of damage, but I was able to just barely survive by having Rosa cast Shell on the party. After adding him to Rydia's roster, we quickly grind it up to level 70 with the whole party, which gets us the trophy, Seasoned Hero. Returning to Zeromus, let's actually discuss what he can do. Outside of a few standard spells, he has 2 unique abilities. The first is Big Bang, which does non-elemental damage to the whole party. The second is called Black Hole. It removes buffs from the party, taking away things like Protect and Shell. An interesting detail to the fight is that while he technically has 65,498 HP, the first time you get him down below 16,000, he'll heal himself fully and then switch to a more aggressive attack pattern. These 2 phases combined put him at around 120,000 HP. Overall, I think it's a pretty good fight. It's not very complex, but I feel like the difficulty is pretty fair. With Zeromus defeated, Fusoya and Golbez go to join the rest of the Lunarians in their cryogenic sleep, and then the moon leaves for no explained reason. The game then ends with Cecil and Rosa's wedding, which also doubles as their coronation as the new king and queen of Baron. The only person absent is Kain, who has chosen to enter a self-imposed exile so that he can rid himself of the darkness in his heart. After this good, if confusing ending, we get the trophy to the blue planet. Hopping into the post-game, let's talk about the last few trophies that we need for the Platinum, starting with the really quick ones. The first we're able to grab by heading to the Land of Summons, where we can use this hidden path to get 4 secret chests. Opening them gets us the trophy, Legendary Treasure Hunter. After this we head over to the Sylvain Cave in the northwest of the Underground. We then head down until we reach the Sylph Cottage, where one of the inhabitants offers to become one of Rydia's summons. This gets us the trophy Summon Master, for acquiring all of the standard summons for Rydia. Immediately after this I got confused because I thought that the Sylvan Cave had the last hidden item I needed. In reality, I'd missed 2 in the Land of Summons, so I quickly flew back there, grabbed them both, and then got the trophy Item Detector for finding all the hidden items in the game. After this, I set about finding the last of the summons. You see, most summons are acquired via the story or by doing side quests. There are, however, a handful that are dropped from certain random encounters. I was very fortunate to get most of them by accident, except for one, an enemy called the Mind Flayer. They are found exclusively in the Magnetic Cavern, so I headed down there and killed them until they handed over the summon. This gets us the trophy, Summon Collector. After this, I focused on filling out the bestiary. In total, there are 195 enemies in the game, and I only had 5 left to find, so let's quickly grab them. The first we need is called Toadger, and they're found all the way back in the underground waterway from the very start of the game. After this we have to do some save file shenanigans, since the next 3 enemies were all missable. The first I went after was the Sorceress, who can be found in the Tower of Zot. Continuing with the tower theme, we have 2 enemies in the Tower of Babel, who I somehow managed to encounter consecutively. First we have the Green Dragon, and then the Mithril Golem. Finally we head back into the Lunar Subterrane. In this one very specific room on the 5th floor, we can encounter an enemy named the Flan Princess. Normally she'd be difficult to find since she's the rarest encounter in the room, but the developers were merciful enough to give us an item called the Siren, which when used summons the rarest encounter in the area. This lets us easily wrap up the trophy, Field Research Professional. Meanwhile, our last trophy isn't nearly as convenient. So you see, the Flan Princess can actually drop an item called the Pink Tail, which we can then trade like we did with the Rat Tail earlier. Using Sirens, I spent the next 30 minutes killing Flan Princesses until one of them finally gave us the item. Taking it to the Tail Freak lets us trade it for the strongest armor in the game, Adamant Armor. This gets us the trophy, Tale of Myth. And with all the trophies earned, we get the trophy, Master of 4. In total, the Platinum took 27 hours. Overall, I'd say it was a very enjoyable game to get the Platinum for. Its difficulty was consistently fair, and there were a number of bosses that really stood out as highlights throughout the game. In terms of story, I can confidently say that it's the best in the series so far. While it does have some wonky moments here or there, it's overall very solid. An especially good aspect is the world building. I've always had a soft spot for RPGs that blend fantasy and sci-fi, and Final Fantasy IV delivers on that kind of world perfectly. And now let's talk about everything that I had to do to get 100% completion outside of the Platinum. The first 2 things I focused on was getting my party to max level and then equipping them with the best gear. Let's start with the equipment because I was able to reach max level while getting it. So there were 3 items that I got for the whole party. The first was Adamant Armor, which required me to get 4 more Pink Tails. Fortunately, I was able to find a shop that sells sirens, so this was pretty manageable. The next item I went after was called the Glass Mask. They can only be acquired by fighting an enemy in the lower levels of the Lunar Subterrane named Wicked Mask. Unlike the Princess Flan, who can be encountered in sets of 5, you can only find the Wicked Mask in pairs. Another factor that slows this grind down is the way the game handles item drops. The way it works is that each enemy in a battle will have a low chance of dropping something. They'll each have multiple options for what that something could be, with each item slot having a progressively lower drop rate. For example, Princess Flans have the Pink Tail in their 3rd slot, giving it a 12.5% drop rate. Meanwhile, the Glass Mask is in the 4th, which gives it a drop rate of 0.39%. The full breakdown of this section of the postgame went like this. I started by reaching max level fighting Wicked Masks. I chose to focus on them first because they gave double the EXP compared to Princess Flans. During the 5 hours before my last party member hit level 99, I found 2 Glass Masks. I then focused on the Pink Tails, which only took around 2 hours. After this, I wrapped up the Glass Mask grind in a quick and easy 6 hours. The next item I went after is called the Cursed Ring, which has an interesting effect. It makes it so that any elemental resistances a party member has will heal them instead of simply reducing the damage. This becomes really powerful when you combine it with the Adamant Armor, which allows you to resist every element. Getting 5 Cursed Rings was initially complicated because I assumed that the only way to get them was by fighting these dinosaur enemies in the Lunar Subterrane. Since you can't use sirens to find them, they were a hassle to fight repeatedly. I eventually scanned through the bestiary and realized that there were other enemies who had the ring, with the best candidate being an enemy named named Evil Dreamer, who can be found in sets of 2 in the Sylvain Cave. The cursed rings added an extra 7.5 hours, but most of that was spent wasting time on the dinosaurs, so I could have been a lot more efficient about it. The last thing I did for 100% completion was maxing out the party's HP and MP. The way this works is that there are 3 stat boosting items that can be found throughout the game. There's the Silver Apple and the Gold Apple, which permanently increase your health by 50 and 100 points respectively. Then there's the Soma Drops, which raise your MP by 10. There's a handful of enemies that can potentially drop them, but here's the 2 that I thought were the best to focus on. For the apples, it was ideal to go for the silver since the gold could only be dropped as the rarest option for a couple enemies. Meanwhile, the silver has a 37.5% drop rate from an early game enemy named Lilith. They can be found in pairs in the latter half of Mount Ordeals. The best enemy for Soma Drops is called the Dark Sage. They can be found in groups of 3 on the 4th floor of the lunar subterrane. In total, I needed 224 silver apples and 234 Soma Drops, which brings up a small issue: cost. When using sirens for Lilith encounters, you lose around 2,500 gil per fight. Fortunately, I was able to make up for this by gaining 4,200 for every Dark Sage encounter. By the time the whole party had maxed out stats, it had taken 74.5 hours. This brings our total time for 100% completion to 122 hours. It should go without saying that I absolutely do not recommend doing this. The only reward is a mild sense of satisfaction, but there are much more convenient ways to get that. To close out the video, I want to talk about a neat little thing that has no bearing on completion. So the party member Edge has an ability called Steal, which lets him, well, steal from enemies. Most of the items you can take aren't much to write home about, except for one called Dark Matter, which you can only steal from 0 miss. Taking it apparently lowers the damage that his Big Bang attack can do, so I guess that's pretty helpful.